part of this, which I want to kind of bring into this presentation, is Utah Drowning Prevention Coalition is a new coalition that just started, so it's very new, and it is on drowning prevention. There's a lot of people in the Parks and Rec, aquatics. We have invited some of those to join this one today, just about different drowning. And we all know that sadly, we had those 3 drownings that had happened. We want to make sure that everybody is getting in the water, especially because it's 1,000 degrees outside, but staying safe. So I wanted to add this. There's a couple of fact sheets in here. They've got some great safety YouTube videos that you can watch, and then you can follow them. Utah Recreation, again, it's Utah Drowning Prevention Coalition. So a lot of great people on this that you guys can follow. All right. So I just want to introduce our speaker today. We're going to have Brody go first. He's got another prior engagement that he's got to get to. So we're going to go through his presentation, and then please, if you've got any questions for him, let's ask at the end of that, and then we'll go in with Alex. So I'm going to, sorry, I just have to minimize this so I can see. So Brody is with Utah State Parks Law Enforcement Southeast Region Assistant Manager. He's been a river ranger for over 15 years with an expertise on lakes and rivers. Previously, he was a professional river guide for 5 years in the Grand Canyon, Cataract Canyon, Westwater Canyon, and on the Colorado River and Desolation Canyon on the Green River. Brody led passengers on both motorized and non-motorized vessels. He and I discussed being on a paddleboard in a river, which kind of terrifies me. So, but preparation and safety were paramount in both of those professions. So he's going to talk to us about that, kind of those etiquettes and safety. And then we've got Alex Kalke. And hopefully I said that right, Alex. He's with the University of Utah Health Emergency Department, clinical nurse for the past 4 years, the past 2 working in the emergency department. Prior to that, he was a bum, that's what he says. He worked as a ski patroller for the Park City Mountain Resort for 5 years, a river guide in Moab for 3 years, worked a season of outdoor therapy, and has also driven a very small motorcycle from the Czech Republic to Mongolia, which sounds fun. He used to live in a van down by the river, but now resides in Ogden with his wife and 2 young sons. All right. So I'm going to stop my share and we are going to turn it over to Brody. So take it away.
Okay, Jamie, thanks. Good morning, everyone. I sure appreciate the invite to this forum. I love paddle sports. I own I own about a dozen non-motorized craft at my house. I'm actually, after this, delivering half of those down to a girls' camp down near Monticello. But I have been on non-motorized craft for like 25 years, really, professionally and personally. There's something about getting out on the water. I'm not sure of the experience of those attending today, but my hope is to cover the basics. I mean, to start with, we had a lot of drownings recently just from people swimming or leaving their boat, or to swim with a friend, or to see someone struggling where they jumped in to help save that person and they end up drowning themselves. In all those cases, and in most cases, those who unfortunately drowned were not wearing a life jacket. That seems to be a really key factor. 8 out of 10 who drown weren't wearing a life jacket, and the other 2 out of 10, it was caused by some other injury which led to that. So life jackets seem to be the most crucial part of this. Now, as I'm going through this presentation, I know Jamie said hold your questions to the end, but if you want to chime in on a chat and you have a question about a certain thing as we're kind of rolling through this, please speak up. I'm happy to answer any questions. I do want to show a short video and to lead you to some great resources where you can get information on all things paddling. My focus, I used to assist Ty Hunter. He's been on some of these forums before, but I used to assist him in the boating program, and my forte is kind of paddling sports. I love to do it. I love to meet people who are out there paddling also. And there's a whole lot of different types of boats that you can jump on. Now, if you Google, paddling sports and stuff, it leads you to some websites. As far as finding out some stats, it's a little hard to track because in most states, non-motorized craft aren't required to be registered. Now, if you were to ask about stats on motorized boats in Utah, yeah, certainly we can bring those up. But this sport is relatively easy to jump into and to go out and do yourself. Boats are relatively cheap, and there's really no instruction required in Utah, other than there's some equipment that's required on your boat, say a paddleboard or a canoe or a kayak or a pool toy or just a floaty. Oops, sorry about that. So it's hard to track, and it's an easy sport to get into. So there's a few key things that you need to do before you go. And I just wanted to show a video really quick. It just goes over in a real broad view of anything and everything you need to have and do before you go out. So I'm hoping to share the screen here really quick. Just give me a second to bring it up. And then maybe we can talk about some of these things after the video here.
In this session, you'll learn basic tips for safe enjoyment of recreational paddle boating in kayaks, canoes, and similar vessels under oars.
You'll learn what to do before getting underway, how to proceed safely, and steps to take if you encounter difficulty.
What problems are we trying to avoid? Not taking vessel-specific training and boating safety courses, not having a vessel safety check, or placing an orange if found decal on your boat.
Wearing water-retaining clothes like t-shirts and jeans that make you colder faster when wet.
Not putting on a proper life jacket, although there are many great choices available for paddle sports.
Not having a means of communications on board, and not telling anyone your plans.
Failure to bring other paddling essentials on board.
Improper loading with too much weight in the bow.
Not preparing for changing weather conditions.
Planning to spend all day paddling your first time out in a canoe or kayak.
Paddling under the influence, which is illegal in all states, as well as more dangerous on water than on land.
Not being responsible for your canoe or kayak's operation.
Not avoiding larger vessels in narrow channels.
And not being visible at night or during the day.
So, how do we do it right? Take vessel-specific training and boating safety courses in advance before planning to go out on the water. Contact the United States Power Squadrons or U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary to schedule a free vessel safety check and obtain an if found decal to help with crew rescue and boat recovery in case of an incident.
Dress for the water, not the air temperature, in bright colors for visibility. Clothe yourself for immersion and wear fast-drying attire. A wetsuit or dry suit will keep you warmer than other options. Choose from many attractive alternatives and wear a Coast Guard approved life jacket whenever you paddle, adjusted to fit snugly and comfortably.
Keep signaling devices, a whistle or horn, plus a mirror or flares readily accessible. Have a way to communicate, such as a waterproof VHF DSC marine radio, and know the proper way to hail Channel 16 for distress. A personal locator beacon or PLB device will provide added protection by transmitting your location via satellite in an emergency.
Leave a float plan with a reliable person. Who's on board, where you'll put in and take out, your expected route, when you'll be back, and what to do if you're not.
Know your limits. Start small. An hour-long, 1 or 2 mile outing, and work up to longer voyages. Load properly with at least 6 inches of freeboard for a fully loaded canoe, including people.
Sit inside kayakers should carry a paddle float and pump. Place stowed gear low in the boat for the comfort of paddlers and attach it to the hull to prevent loss in case of capsizing.
Place heavier items toward the stern so the bow rides higher to help the boat move more easily through the water.
Know how to reboard in case of flooding or capsizing, and practice in advance.
Always carry drinking water and stay hydrated.
Treat weather forecasts like the best-case scenario and plan for adversely changing weather conditions. Check tides or river levels and note when the sun will rise and set.
Don't paddle if you shouldn't drive. Intoxicants are even more dangerous on the water, and BUI laws apply to all vessels under oars. Be responsible for your boat.
Avoid larger vessels in narrow channels and high traffic areas.
If out after dark, you must exhibit required lights according to the NAV rules. A flashlight showing a white light can generally meet this requirement. Be aware of factors like fog and glare. If you're between a power boat and the sun, low on the horizon, the operator almost certainly won't see you.
Have an exit strategy at all times. Know the nearest safe landing if a fast-moving thunderstorm approaches. Don't wait for bad weather. If you sense a change for the worse, get off the water right away.
Further improving your skills is one of the joys of paddling. Take additional hands-on training courses that cover safety issues as well as operational techniques. Practice in safe conditions with instructors or experts to expand your paddling abilities.
Sorry, hold on. Okay, let me try and find you all again. Could you hear the video okay, everyone? Sorry, I didn't. Okay, great, great. There's a lot of instruction and it's thrown at you like someone's throwing it up in your face, right? There's a lot of things thrown at you. If you'll notice in that video, those people who were taking the safety course, they were all over 60. So that tells you something. Those people, I think, were all Coast Guard Auxiliary or some other organization where those who came in reality, most people don't go take a safety course before they go and take their kayak they just bought at Costco or Walmart, you know, the little Intex, you know, makeshift raft with plastic oar locks and stuff to go out and play on the water. In reality, most people just don't do that. And nor is it a requirement in Utah for someone to take a safety course before they go out. In Utah, the only course that's required is for personal watercraft, but that's another discussion for kids to be able to go out and to go on a really fast machine. It goes from 0 to 60 in a few seconds. Anyway, we're working on that and trying to get the legislature to change a few things to where there is some more education required. But then again, you can't force someone to wear seatbelts. You know, you can drive without a driver's license and do those things. So this sport is a lot of fun and it can lead to a lot of issues. Did anything jump out to anyone on the video that maybe they wanted to talk about or describe? And if not, that's okay, but I love awkward silences.
I have something. I live near Utah Lake, and it seems like Utah Lake, it's typically kids in non-motorized, you know, boats and things. And I don't know the area very well, but from what I understand, that lake is only like 10 feet deep. So could you talk about that?
Yeah, of course. Actually, when I was like a little scout, I did my swim test out there and you were supposed to swim like a mile. Well, I walked most of it because that lake is really shallow. I grew up near there and you're right, it is not a very deep lake. In a heavy windstorm, if you're out on a boat there, your boat will actually dip into the mud at the bottom of the lake, and then you'll go up into the, you know, peak of a wave and down into the trough. It's a really shallow lake. What law requires is that anything that you can navigate on the water that floats, a life jacket is required. So some people think like a pool toy. People will go out and it's just assumed that you don't need something, you know, like a life jacket. In the surfing world, no one wears a life jacket surfing out on the ocean. There is some buoyancy, you know, with salt water and stuff. But technically, Hawaii law or whatever, wherever you surf, requires you to have a life jacket. It's just kind of a social norm not to wear it. And it's the same with pool toys and those who maybe stay close to shore don't think they need one. So if I'm getting to your question right, kids, 12 and under have to wear a life jacket all the time. So anyone 13 years or older, it's not required to wear, but you have to have one on, on the boat, on the kayak, on the paddleboard. So what a lot of people will do, say on a stand-up paddleboard, is they'll, tie their life jacket under some straps, at the front of the paddleboard. And that's really common because everyone wants to get their suntan on, right? There are some options out there to allow you to wear a life jacket. There's what's called an inflatable. So on a lake, you could wear this inflatable life jacket around your waist, and it won't inflate unless you pull the cord. So it's wrapped up really tight. It looks like a fanny sack or something like that. And until you pull it, it won't inflate. There are some automatics out there too, so that if you were to fall in, it would automatically inflate. And then it would require you to put a strap over your head and, use it as a life jacket. There's a lot of restrictions on those though, those inflatables. You got to be 16 years at least. You got to have that cognitive ability to be able to, if you fall in and you hit the cold water and you're in a state of shock somewhat, you've got to rescue yourself. You've got to put that strap over your head and make it work the right way. So that's why that 16 years of age is required. All life jackets has to be, Coast Guard approved. If they're not, they're not legal to have on the water. So there's a lot of impact vests that people wear out there. It's a thinner looking jacket that goes around you, especially when those who like to wakeboard or water ski behind a boat. The thicker, bulkier life jackets seem somewhat restrictive, so they'll use these impact vests, and we can see them right away when we're out on the water patrolling. You can tell the difference just based on their thickness, and then we go and deal with that. So to get back to your Utah Lake question, did I answer your question, Jennifer?
Yeah, I think so. I guess I'm just so curious why, but you explained it with the boat going into the mud. That made sense to me, because I just can never figure out why every year there's so many kids in our neighborhood, well, not so many in our neighborhood, but in the area every year that get in trouble out there so quickly.
Yeah, are you on the west side?
Yeah, Saratoga Springs.
Yeah, unfortunately, two girls last year, right, 18 and 19, were out on it's like an inflatable yellow duck. And they'd been going out there for days. And just to bring this up, an unfortunate thing that happened to them was a windstorm came up and it separated them from their ducky. And they didn't have life jackets on or have life jackets with them when they were out on this ducky. So that's unfortunately really common for people to go out thinking they're on just a pool toy and they're in the marina there or just outside the marina. And then windstorms out of Utah Lake are terrible. They come fast and furious, and the waves will turn 5 to 6 feet, and you can easily get separated. You watch your ducky floaty just blow away in the wind faster than you can swim, and if you're far enough away from shore, you just can't get back. And unfortunately, again, when those waves are peaking, cresting, and falling, you feel like you're in deeper water, and it doesn't take long, to have the waves overcome you. Yeah, Jamie, Jennifer, what we could do out there to help have kids wear life jackets. I don't know if they've put a life jacket loaner station out there or if you've seen one, but there are a couple of avenues where you can go and get funding, get the money where they'll set up a life jacket station out there so that when you show up and you don't have your life jacket, you can grab one off of this stand or tree, go use it for the day, and then return it at the end of the day. That we have more of those at a lot of our state parks that have water bodies on them. That's one.
Thanks very much.
You bet. Any other questions?
There was also a question in the chat regarding the channel 16 that was mentioned, radio channel 16.
Oh, great. Yes, this is known around the world as a kind of emergency channel for the water. So if you have a boat and you have a, you know, like a channel or a radio channel, you'd have to install it. It's something order. I think you've got to order and install and put on your boat. But this channel is universally known as, you know, you can call out an SOS or call for help. Someone most likely is listening to this channel, whether it's the Coast Guard Auxiliary that we have. You know, it's several water bodies around the state. Us as rangers, we always scan that channel whenever we go out onto the water. And that includes, you know, Utah Lake and all the other lakes in Utah, at least where there's a state park or where a ranger is patrolling on. We always monitor that channel, and that's a great place to go to call for help if, say, your boat's sinking or you're broken down. Another method is to call 911. Most of our water bodies have cell phone coverage, and you call 911, they'll get to us pretty quickly, and then we can respond out on the water. No, but thanks for bringing up that. That's a great question, a great topic to cover. It's a Marine band radio that just came to me. You can get a portable one, you can get one installed on your boat, but that's one way you can go. Unlike a paddlecraft, non-motorized, you're not going to have that. But you can have like a whistle, something that blows really loudly. You can, with a high pitch, people can hear that for miles. Whistle's a good piece of equipment to have. So as far as what the state requires you to have on a, you know, a craft that holds 2 or a few people or yourself, it's really simple. You need a life jacket for every person, and you don't even need like a spare like paddle or oar unless you're at least 16 feet long. Always good to have one, but things that are less than that 16-foot magic number, you can, you know, use your hands and paddle to shore. On those kinds of boats that don't bail itself, there's some rafts and kayaks that are self-bailing, which means it lets water in, but it lets it out, usually on those inflatable kayaks or duckies. But those kinds of vessels that don't have that ability, you've got to carry something to be able to scoop the water out, whether it's a pump. I think you could see it in the video there, or some people will cut a gallon milk jug in half and use the handle and half of it to scoop water out. That's another great way to, you know, quickly get water out of your boat. Another thing they talked about in the video was knowing before you go. And what they mean by that, or if you didn't pick up on it, was have a plan. Tell someone where you're going, when you're launching, when you're going to return, so that if you're overdue and you're not able to call out for help, someone's going to know where you are, so that they could at least come to the general area and search for you or whatnot. Again, cell phone's great. There's a lot of waterproof packages that you can get, and to be able to use your cell phone while it's in the package, you can store it and quickly, you know, call out and call to someone you need. There's some other devices like an inReach, which will pick up on a satellite. You can use it to text. You can set it up before you go to text whoever you want it to. If you were able to, you know, if you got into some trouble, you could push that SOS button and it would send an automatic text to your friends, your loved ones, whoever you think you believe would actually come out and try and help you or rescue you. So.
Awesome. Brody, can you talk about where some suggestions where people can go for the safety classes and where those are offered?
Yes, that's great. Certainly on our website, it's stateparks.utah.gov. Maybe let me share my screen here again really quick. So here we are, stateparks.utah.gov. There's, you know, parks, every park in the system you can go to, but under activities and under boating, you scroll down, there's some tabs here. So there's education. If you scroll down, there's some courses to choose from, adult education courses. You can even do like a quick quiz, test your boating IQ, and then this AIS education course is for aquatic invasive species. We have a mussel problem we're trying to keep out of the state. But anyway, on these education courses, click on that, scroll down. There's two main sources that we use. There's Boat Ed and Boater Exam. So if you go to Boat Ed, you can log in, create a, you know, a profile, and choose your state. That's how it starts. Choose Utah, and it'll get you into the Utah course, which covers, you know, Utah specific laws and rules and education. We used to teach hands-on, like personal watercraft courses. We don't do that anymore. So many people have gotten more value out of, you know, teaching their own kids and doing that. But this online course is the written exam. And anyway, this is a card you can obtain by completing the course, but there's where you'd go to get started. If a course is not the thing for you and you don't have time for it, there's, let me go back to the webpage. There are a lot of other resources. I have a few highlighted, but let me go to paddling.com. This is a great place. Oops. To get, you know, a lot of information. There's this hipster guy in here who's provided a lot of videos, but you can go and get little tips from there. There's gear, you know, gear reviews. You can jump on and find out about what boat's best for you, what size. So for me, I'm 6'3", and I'm like 230. So I have a paddleboard that fits my size. It's a little bit wider and a little bit longer, but it keeps me really stable on the water. So that Jamie, when I go run the river, I'm not gonna fall off as often. So let's talk about paddleboards a little bit. This is the latest craze in the water world. It is taken off, it has exploded. We have more, unfortunately, fatalities from non-motorized craft, especially paddleboards, because it's easy to do and it's easy to leave your life jacket on the front of your board and to not have a strap to your ankle. So one thing that I've pushed and tried for several years is to get an ankle strap required that's attached to a paddleboard. So if you're not going to wear your life jacket and it's, you know, tied down on the front of your stand-up paddleboard and you fall in, say in a windstorm, that paddleboard's going to blow away. But if you have this strap on your ankle, a lot of surfers use it. If you notice on the coast, it keeps your board close to you so that when you fall off, wipe out, that board's, you know, 8 to 10 feet away, and you can use the strap to pull you back to the board and jump back on, and it keeps you floating. That's a really cool piece of equipment to have if you're not going to wear your life jacket. And that board is easy to get away from you, especially when the wind comes up. And we get a lot of wind, like every afternoon, it seems like in Utah, the wind will come up and create some issues on the water. So paddling.com is a great place. Let me show you just the list really quick. Resources you can go to. So back on our website, stateparks.utah.gov, there's this tab, it's called Extras. If you go to that, you can scroll down and there's additional boating resources. There is a whole ton of resources to go to. You know, American Canoe Association, the Sailing, Boat Ed, Watercraft Sport Industry Association. There's a lot of great tips and videos on there. Just a whole bunch of resources. It's really, if you want to learn and know more, it's easy to go find. But the challenge for us is getting most of the public to have that same desire to go learn or to go know or to know before you go. So in the video, one last thing, when they mentioned, if you feel the weather changing, if you see clouds approaching, it's time to stay close to shore and get off the water. So many times storm hits and it'll capsize boats, and especially Utah Lake is a great example. We can see the wind coming when the barometer starts dropping and you see this storm front moving from the north coming across the lake. That's where we just start running for our boats, because we know 20 minutes later we're going to get called out and there's going to be 30 calls for service for boats that are in trouble. So see a storm coming, man, get off the lake quick. This pastime is so much fun. It's my favorite pastime. If I'm not working, I'm playing on my paddleboard or kayak or whatnot. And we've taught our dog to do it too. And he wears a life jacket and we wear a life jacket. And it's just fine. We know we're going to go home at night. So any other questions? Well, to maybe finish off, this is an easy sport to get into and it's a lot of fun. COVID has brought out a lot of novices, a new type of recreationalist that wants to get out and play, and that's great. We love that. Love seeing more people out there. It's just it's a time to process, how do we educate these newbies? I mean, it's so easy to go buy one and just go out and play on the water. Again, the number one thing that's going to help us all get home at night is just having that life jacket, wearing that life jacket, knowing before you go. And there's even tips on how to paddle on those sites, how to do it the right way, what type of paddle to get. There's just a ton of information out there. And I live in Moab. I'll just put that invite out right now. If you want to know more, if you come to Moab, there's a lot of things to do and see, and river is where I love to be, being a former river guide and where I spend my days off, really. Yeah, give me a holler. Tell you where to go, what to do, who to rent a boat from, if you don't have the equipment, on our website, there's this Utah Guides and Outfitters. There's a whole bunch of companies that are willing to take you down on that river trip and have all the equipment and the expertise to show you a good time. So, Jamie, anything else you would like me to add?
No, I think that's great. I'm going to have to come and take you up on that and actually try the river. My dog loves the paddleboard too, but I have him, both of us are in a life jacket, but I'm still kneeling down. I haven't really gotten the whole standing up part yet. So, but I will. Right on.
That river, there's a white water and then flat water. There's so much time to recover between rapids that you stand up in the flat water sections, and then when the waves come, you just kneel down. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's why I wear a life jacket, because I'd still fall off. It's fine. Yes, thank you so much, Brody. We really appreciate you coming and presenting, and it was always great to have somebody that can share their passion and safety with us.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, everyone.
Mm-hmm. All right, and enjoy going and dropping off lots of things.
Thank you. Hey, Alex, good luck.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Alex.
Thank you,
Thanks again, Brody. Alex, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, let's go over here to sharing the screen. All right. So when I first kind of signed up to do this, kind of thought about injury prevention and things that can kind of happen. And then I kind of thought about, oops, let's see if this, there's the next click. That is not it. There it is. The Swiss cheese model. Sure, a lot of you have seen this with COVID and things like that. They talked about this a lot with social distancing, mask wearing, and then the vaccine and things like that. But basically, it's levels of protection. It also can be areas where you can kind of think about things that you do beforehand that kind of help prevent issues, the kind of gear you have, thinking about the weather like that the video showed, making sure you know what's going to be the conditions, knowing the flow. I know I deal mostly with rivers, not so much flat water, so knowing the types of conditions you'll have out there can all help sort of prevent accidents from happening. But the big thing that happened kind of early in my boating career is a couple of times I ended up on the water a little bit underprepared and got a little bit hypothermic. And then, as we all know, when you get a little bit cold, you start to maybe make mistakes. And so thinking about preventing those types of heat and cold related emergencies can help avoid a big accident that might require a lot more trauma resuscitation type modalities. So trying to avoid those things. I was thinking about how to prevent those, and thinking about how hot and cold can kind of make us kind of make some mistakes. So next slide. So I want everyone to look at this picture and just kind of tell me what you see. Does anyone know what that is? Pretty common here in the Utah Valley and Utah in general. That is a swamp cooler. So basically how a swamp cooler works, you have water, hot, dry air goes across the water, heat's transferred to turning that water into water vapor, and then cold air then it's transferred into your house. So we have mechanisms of heat loss. So I don't know like how often people go out in the river, but generally speaking, there's water, maybe not so much with all the drought and things that we're having, not as much as we would like. And then there's almost always wind. So evaporative cooling happens pretty often in Utah, and rivers and lakes and all that sort of stuff. So evaporation, just body heat, causes perspiration or water that's on your body to get lost when that liquid is changed to vapor. And then we have conduction. So like Brody was talking about, if you're in an inflatable kayak that's a self-bailing, your butt is probably going to be in a little bit of water. So your body is losing heat through contact with the water and kind of being in that water. And then convection is basically if you were to just wind without the water. So you're kind of always having a little bit of body heat loss to just the surrounding air if it is colder than your person. And then radiation is basically just body heat loss in nearby objects without physically touching them. So there's a lot of ways that our body loses heat, and especially when we're out, if we're underprepared, if you are wearing cotton or other sort of non-quick dry materials, you can easily lose a lot of body heat if you go for a swim and you have those non-quick drying or the types of materials that don't keep warm water near your body, like neoprene and things like that. You can get very cold very quickly, and just from personal experience, it's fairly easy to get hypothermic if you are underprepared and if you don't take the kind of breaks that you need. And so And we just have some classifications of hypothermia. This is categorized by patient's core temperature. Mild is anything below 95 degrees, moderate is anything between 93.2 to 86 degrees, and then severe is below 86 degrees. And then there's a nice little picture there as well, kind of showing the kinds of signs and symptoms that can happen with hypothermia. The important thing too about sort of hypothermia, a lot of times you don't necessarily know that it's happening. So you we've all been cold before, we've all kind of dealt with it. But as your body kind of continues to lose heat, you won't necessarily know it. You will think you can battle through. You've been cold before. You're gonna be fine. You'll just you just have one more rapid run or things like that. So you think that you're gonna be fine. But another thing that kind of can happen as well is these kind of things can be cumulative. So if you take a swim early on in the river and then you get a little bit cold and you take a second swim, you have the potential to start reaching those more dangerous levels of hypothermia. And then you might also not have the cognitive wherewithal to self-rescue, and that can make it so you potentially have to have a bigger rescue effort and extractions and things of that nature, which is what you don't want on your fun day out on the river. You want to, like Brody said, make it home. So that way you, get to home to your loved ones. And then something else that is something to kind of think about is after drop. So as we all know, kind of when we are cold, blood is shunted to the core to where all of our important organs are. So we have colder blood out in the periphery. So if you warm up quickly in the periphery, all of that cold blood gets sent to your core, and you'll have a little bit of a dip in your core temperature as that blood returns into your core. Then we have management of hypothermia. Yeah. So big thing is recognition, recognition in yourself, recognition in people in your party. If people are starting to go through the umbles, which is another way to kind of think about hypothermia. They're fumbling, they can't put on their life jacket, or aren't able to do sort of fine dexterity tight tasks. They're probably starting to be a little bit hypothermic. Maybe a good time to take a break, warm up in the sun, take off any cold clothes or things like that. But that's a very important part, because if you can recognize early, it's a lot easier than if you don't notice and then they take another swim. They are going to have a worse time and a harder time kind of rewarming. And I realized too, I've lost the slide. I don't know where it went. But there's basically, as far as classifications, there's there's two different kinds too of hypothermia. There's non-immersion, which is basically just kind of being out in the cold, and there's immersion, which is anytime you're in water, underwater, or up to your neck in water. And with immersion and things like that, you don't lose body heat quite as quickly as you think, but you do lose the ability to kind of have that muscle metabolism to shiver, to provide warmth that you kind of would have. And then you also kind of lose the ability to self-rescue, like we talked about. So if you see someone who in your group who kind of is going into the beginning stages of hypothermia, it's important to prevent further heat loss. So basically get them out of the water, get them someplace hopefully sunny and warm, and kind of make sure you take off any wet clothes and things like that. And then initiate rewarming. So there's two different modalities of rewarming. The first one kind of is just passive, just kind of making sure that any heat that they do have in them stays with them. So this is kind of that Mylar blanket that you have, you can kind of put on them. Also making sure, like that mechanism of heat loss show, you want to make sure that if you have any Apoco pad or some sort of padding, you can get them up off of any cold earth or stones or anything like that. You want to make sure that they aren't losing heat that way. So just kind of making sure that they are not losing any heat that they have, so that way you don't have to rewarm them more than you would have to. And then there's active, and then there's external active rewarming. With internal out in the field, basically all you really have is drinking hot drinks, sugary drinks, kind of providing energy, so that way your body can have metabolism to shiver, and so that way you can kind of rewarm a little bit that way. And then external heating is just kind of the sounds, applying any sort of heat packs. You can have warm water and Nalgene's or anything like that. With active external warming, it's also important that you kind of try to rewarm the core first, that way you can avoid that after drop. So usually it's kind of putting any warming devices. I don't know, that seems a little bit strange to say, but yeah, warm packs, you want to put them kind of in places where there's large arteries, underneath the armpits and the groin, and then kind of wrap it in, so that way all that heat stays in there. And then obviously when the heat that you are applying to the person, don't directly apply it to them, because you don't want to burn them. So that's the other thing. This is kind of hopefully common sense, but sometimes when we're in a stressful situation, that common sense kind of goes away. So just something to think about. Then obviously too, if someone has had a submersion injury or is severely hypothermic, you want to start thinking about extraction, getting them to definitive care, because obviously there's a lot more that can be done in the hospital, that can be done by the side of a river or lake. So you want to make sure you're always kind of thinking about whether, if it's a stay and play, or if it's a load and go type situation, where you want to try to get them to get them to the emergency department, hospital, or a flight nurse, or flight paramedics, and all that good stuff. So it's just kind of the next thing. And then kind of other notes to think about with as well, with cold water and stuff like that. A lot of our water comes from below dams. So even if it is 100 bajillion degrees outside, that water is cold, and it's still very possible to get hypothermic in moving water situations. All right, so we're going on to heat-related emergencies. And so we'll just go over the mechanisms of heat-related emergencies. And you know what you're thinking, Alex, that's the same slide that you had before. Those are the same mechanisms of heat loss. And that is correct. Thermodynamics doesn't really change. But basically what you have is just the loss of thermoregulation. So our body does a pretty good job of trying to keep our body in a certain set range of temperatures. But if we're out in the sun, paddleboarding all day, didn't bring any water with us, and we go for a hike or something and come back, and we're lost the ability to sweat a little bit or things like that, or there's only so much blood that you can shunt to the periphery before you start just overheating. So that loss of thermoregulation can cause you to become hyperthermic. So it's the same sort of thing. It's just kind of in reverse. You've lost the ability to cool yourself down. So with that, you can kind of use evaporative cooling as a great way to cool yourself off if you do start getting really hot, and then kind of making it so you can continue to play. But it is definitely pretty easy out there when it is as hot as it is to become a little bit hyperthermic. So we'll define hypothermia really quick. So it's an abnormally high temperature, anything above 101 degrees Fahrenheit, 38.3. And so there's a couple of things that can kind of happen when we do reach temperatures that get this side. The first thing is heat-related syncope. So that basically is when your body is trying to cool off the core as much as you can. You kind of can become a little hypotensive and faint, basically. So that's just something that can sort of happen just from kind of being just a little bit hyperthermic. You can kind of faint just because your body is trying its best to get as much blood to the periphery as possible to kind of shed excess heat. Next thing is heat cramps, which we've all kind of had, Charlie horses and things like that. Anytime you're doing any sort of exertional exercise, you're obviously losing water, but you're also losing electrolytes and things like that. And then you can obviously cramp up. And I mean, if you're having heat cramps and things like that, maybe time to take a little break, find some shade, hang out for a bit, drink some water, have some salty snacks and things like that. And then the last two are kind of the more serious things that can happen with hyperthermia. The first one being heat exhaustion, the second one being heat stroke. Heat exhaustion can obviously lead to heat stroke. We'll do a little more learning about these two things. So differentiating heat exhaustion versus heat stroke. So heat exhaustion is anything less than 104 degrees Fahrenheit. With heat exhaustion, you still have the ability to sweat. So usually people will be pretty diaphoretic. They'll have a headache. They'll just feel kind of crummy. They'll have cool, clammy skin, weak pulses. They'll be cramping and having just kind of a bad time. If you can catch someone before and their heat stroke, that's good. You want to kind of get them before they're in there, because heat stroke is obviously a much more serious, just more serious. So temperature greater than 104 degrees, you'll have a decreased level of consciousness, still kind of start maybe fading in and out of consciousness a little bit. You will not be sweating, and then you'll have strong bounding pulse. This is definitely a medical emergency. If someone is kind of looking like this, it is time to start thinking about getting them out of there, getting them to emergency department, or flying them out. This is definitely a big deal. Other things that can happen in seizures, organ dysfunction, and basically are just kind of things are shutting down you've overheated. Management of this, prevention is key. Like we talked about, there's not a whole bunch of things you can do when people reach that sort of later stage. So if you can, make sure you're taking frequent breaks, light, loose fitting clothing, especially anything that has SPF or anything like that, want to be completely covered if you can, just to avoid any sort of sunburn and like that allows more loss of water. And then hydration out in Moab and guiding, things like that. The general rule of thumb was 1 gallon per person per day. And then electrolyte replacements as well. So if you have some pocket bacon, that's a great way to, get some salt and things like that. you want to make sure that you are having salty snacks along with that water and things like that, or Gatorade. All of those things are good ways to prevent kind of reaching a more serious hyperthermic state. If someone is hyperthermic, you want to basically get them out of the sun, get them in shade. You want to fan them off. If you do have water that you can obviously dip into and kind of apply that to them as well. Try to get them cooled off a little bit. See if you can give them some synthetic sweat, I guess is probably the best way to think about it with water. And then obviously if they're able to hydrate, getting them hydrated, kind of going slow at first, just kind of, and then extricate as necessary. And then we have information about vulnerable populations. Obviously elderly, toddlers, newborns, and then something I like to think about as well is making sure you do have enough water and things like that for any animals you would take out as well. It's kind of important to think about these groups of people just because they do not have the coping mechanisms that we have as adults. So it's kind of, well, older adults are adults, but as middle-aged adults, I don't know. My one young son is a week old, so I'm a little bit sleep deprived. So that is maybe I'll blame it up to that. So then I just have some fun pictures of some rivers and things. So be safe out there. And then I just add references. And I'm gonna stop my screen share. If there's any questions, I will try my best to answer them. But that's all I got.
Yeah. Alex, have you seen a large increase of heat exhaustion or heat stroke coming into the ED this year, just with the higher heat levels?
I can't say that I have, but we did have at least one patient who was going on a 24-hour bike ride, and she had some pretty bad cramping and stuff like that, and had some mild rhabdo. So I mean, it's definitely possible, and that was someone who was obviously very, very fit, so it can happen pretty easily. But I can't say definitively, but I can imagine that we'll start seeing, hopefully, Salt Lake's doing a pretty good job of providing cooling stations and things like that, but it is definitely, yeah, an issue.
Awesome. Is there a problem? We just launched the poll just a few minutes ago in case people have to leave. Is it working now for most?
So I relaunched it. So I ended it and I relaunched it with making sure that I changed those to multiple choice. That was my bad. I'm sorry. So that should be good. Alex, thank you so much for coming and presenting today.
No worries.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a hot summer and.
All right, Melissa, if it still won't, just go ahead and answer. So if it's not letting you do multiple choice still, just answer your favorite, answer your top thing that you think is can lead to injury or complication. And then
we'll give everybody credit for that one.
Yeah, on the following that are related to hypothermia, pick the most dangerous. How about that? If you're not able to answer multiple, do that.
You get extra points.
And I don't know why there's an untitled. I don't know why there's an untitled question on there. I'm struggling today with the polling questions. It's okay. Yeah, but does anybody, and it's Jessica, if you already submitted, right now we'll just give people credit that we're on to the end. Because I know a couple people had already answered and submitted before I relaunched this. So we'll be able to see that, Jessica, and give you credit.
Awesome. Well, very good information, very relevant to all of us, to this summer, to our families, to our children. I like that you really went in and mentioned the vulnerable people, because I think sometimes, you know, we feel fine and we don't think about it, and you look around and you forget that there's a lot of smaller people or people who just aren't used to being out that really need to pay attention. We need to pay attention to. So that was a great point that you brought up.
Yeah, and I think that it adds on to what Brody had said about the people that were taking the class were all over the age of 60. So those vulnerable populations too, and even our younger folks are getting out there and being active, which is good.